Okay. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay. We're live on YouTube. Alhamdulillah. Good.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Alright.
Inshallah.
So, Bismillah, can we start, Chef?
Bismillah, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, so we're gonna have our session number 21.
Inshallah.
Hadith 35, fast for your heart, as well as Hadith 36, visit the cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Inshallah.
Okay. May I read the question, Chef?
Yes, inshallah. Please go ahead.
Question number 1. I am overwhelmed with the works of perfecting my obligatory acts, including salah and fasting. Will these deeds others to be considered to have been completed even they are not when I die? Will all or some of our deeds be considered to have been completed when we die, even we didn't, such as replacing our missed days of Ramadan?
No. So, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما رب العالمين. So the first question, and these are actually two questions we've merged into one. So let's deal with the first one. When she says, I'm overwhelmed with perfecting my obligatory acts, including salah and fasting. It's not supposed to be overwhelming. If by overwhelming you mean that I'm concerned about it and I'm trying my best, then alhamdulillah, this is kind of a good effort that you're putting, inshallah, in all of them. If by overwhelmed you mean, which the word itself leads us to believe, overwhelmed, I'm too tired, then it means, or it may mean that you're doing something wrong or it's excessive. Because I don't understand why I'm overwhelmed. When you're overwhelmed, I'm too tired, and basically I don't know what to do. Things are piling up, and I can't seem to escape it, right? That's what an overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed with work, with exams, maybe you're buried under them. So the obligatory work or worship is not supposed to be so overwhelming. Of course, if you think about it, that is, I want to really perfect it, so I want to be aware on my salah, I want to be aware in my fasting. Yes, it's going to take a lot from us, but it's not supposed to exhaust us to the degree where we just are feeling helpless and overworked and so tired. Inshallah, it's supposed to motivate us to keep working. And if you find yourself that the result of your actions are leading you to be excessively tired, so maybe you're pushing yourself too much or in the wrong direction, or maybe expecting perfection, and there's not going to be perfection, or expecting way too much way too soon. So I don't know which one of these. So we're not going to be, inshallah, we're not supposed to be so overwhelmed by it. Pray and try your best. And once you finish, inshallah, find out what was missing and try to fix it the next time, inshallah, and so on and so on. And there are only 5 salah. We're talking about the obligations. Talking about only 30 days in the entire year when we're talking about Ramadan. Zakah, a small percentage. So these obligations are not supposed to overwhelm and exhaust, inshallah. So if there's something I missed about why they would be overwhelming you, let me know, inshallah. Will these deeds be considered to have been completed even though they are not when I die? So what do you mean by not completed then? So in salah, right, there are, let's say, 2 types of incompleteness in salah. One, I didn't pray. I missed it. That is, of course, not going to be considered complete. You need to do something for that to be completed, meaning pray on time. If you forgot about it, pray as soon as you remember it. Or if you missed it entirely, pray sunnahs, so that they can stand in place of the obligations that we have missed and repent from missing these obligations, right? So that's a type of incompleteness. There's another type of incompleteness where you've been absent-minded while praying. Well, that's an incompleteness, but you did perform the obligation. You did. So you're not responsible for missing that obligation when you meet Allah Azza wa Jalla. You simply maybe not have been rewarded as much compared to if you were present, conscious of what you were doing. So again, incompleteness here is not clear. The second question, because it offers an example, makes it more clear. Will all or some of our deeds be considered to have been completed when we die, even though we did not do that, such as replacing our missed days of Ramadan? So if you meet Allah and you have missed days of Ramadan and you did not make them up, and you did not make them up out of neglect, right? Not trying and then failing, no, out of neglect, then when you meet Allah, then you will meet Him lacking. So of course the deeds are not complete, right? But if you meet Allah Azza wa Jalla with days of Ramadan that you did not fast, you owe those days, but you tried, but you couldn't, that's different, right? So again, types of incompleteness. If there is neglect, then of course when you meet Allah Azza wa Jalla, then the deeds are incomplete. But if you did not neglect them, you tried your best, but time did not allow it, your health did not allow it, then that's a completely different story, inshallah. So perfecting our deeds, there's, let's say, two types of them. That perfecting your deeds, meaning that you perform the obligation. Here's the zakat. Here are the days of Ramadan. So you do it. And you try your best, inshallah, for your niyyah, for your intention, for your motivation, to be as much as possible for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla, to have as much iman as you can while you're doing that. So that's a perfection. There's a perfection where you obsess with actual perfection, meaning that each single rak'ah is perfect. Each single day of fasting is perfect. Don't think like that, because that will sap you of energy, because you can never be perfect in every performance, in every day. So accept shortcomings at times, learn from them, and then come back, inshallah, strong. Wallahu a'lam. So in case I missed anything related to this question, inshallah, follow-up questions, inshallah, should rectify that, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam.
Sure. When the person is feeling overwhelmed, does the person need to check the lifestyle, or probably sign up for the right course to do salah according to Rasulullah? Do they need to do that as well, Sheikh?
It's possible, because I need to know why they're feeling overwhelmed. Meaning, for some people, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you sign up for a course, that is going to even overwhelm you more. If you learn, if you're of a mindset where I need to do everything perfectly, and you take a class and they're listing all the sunnahs, that's just going to add to your burden. So that person needs probably to understand why they're feeling overwhelmed and talk to someone about it, inshallah. I'm feeling overwhelmed because of this. And once they understand how to introduce balance into their lives, inshallah, then it's okay to take classes later on. So maybe the immediate solution to it is to talk to someone who knows more and understand why they are overwhelmed. And once the solution is introduced, inshallah, the classes that you're talking about is, of course, is going to expand your understanding of Islam, so that you know what is possible and what is not, when to push yourself, when you push yourself too much, and you need, to take it slow a little bit, so that you allow yourself to recover, set realistic goals, all of that, inshallah. So that comes with increased knowledge. But talk to someone so that you understand why you are overwhelmed and the best way to treat it, inshallah, directly, inshallah.
So question number 2. Besides learning to manage our desire during fasting, each person has to do the same with his or her nafs, qarin, fitrah, shaitan's whispering, from jinn and mankind too, right?
So when we say learn to manage your desire, or fasting, right, in itself is a great tool to manage and observe your desire and remold it, right? So when learning to manage your desire, all the things that you talked about are included in that statement. So if I desire something, okay, so we'll see what you've listed with my nafs. We've explained that nafs and desire are based on, I think, local usage is the same thing. This is your desire, this is your nafs. So you're not talking about two separate things. When I said your qareen, which is your shaitan, well, he's whispering so that you would follow your desire. So if I said control and manage your desire, you're also controlling and managing the whispers of the shaitan, isn't it? So they're not separate. You're not going to feel, oh, this is my desire, this is the whisper of the shaitan. You can't really separate. You just have one feeling. And that feeling is fueled with whispers from the shaitan, fueled with your desire, right? Fitra, same thing. We're talking about the same thing. So you don't need to think about that, oh, I'm going to be so analytical that in my set I'm going to distinguish between shaitan and qareen and this. It doesn't work like that. You simply have, let's say, a desire. That desire could be healthy, but it could be redirected to the haram. Control it. And when controlling it, right, you are working against a desire of yours. You are working against the whispers of the shaitan. You're working against the beautification of the devils, right? You are working against all that. But don't complicate matters by thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to identify different actors. Here's the qareen. This is, oh, that's the qareen here. Oh, this is another shaitan here. This is the nafs here. You're not going to be able to do this. So simplify, inshallah, right? Simplify. Allah.
So, Sheikh, if I may ask, we don't have to do an analysis that she mentioned, but to understand the matters, whether we are following our nafs or doing what is good, so that's where we compare the matters with the Quran and Sunnah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you desire something, you feel like something, right? Is this in agreement with the Quran and the Sunnah or not? If it's in disagreement, then you know that this is something that I have to avoid. You don't need to sit and say, well, was this my desire? Was this my nafs? Was this the shaitan? Was this? You just need to know that you need to avoid it, because it's likely a combination. The shaitan, once the shaitan knows that you like something and it's wrong, he'll push you there. So you don't need to sit and analyze, right? Allah.
So, because in the Quran as well, it says you might be loving something that is not good. I mean, something is bad, or we are not loving something that is good. So basically, when we check with the Quran and Sunnah, it's aligned, and though that our heart doesn't feel good about it, whatever, we just train ourselves to like just follow it and submit no ator. Is that the right mentality and mindset?
Yes, exactly. So I mean, you sometimes are gonna hate things that are good for you, and you will love things that are bad for you. So how do you know? You consult Allah Azza wa Jal, just like, okay, consider like on a human level. You like certain food, it's making you sick. You don't know what's making you sick. You go to the doctor. The doctor tells you you have this condition. When you eat this food, it is going to make you sick. You say, but I like it. They say, yeah, but it is bad for you. So here's an example of something that you like that is bad for you. So either you're going to listen to yourself, your desire, or your nafs, and then eat it, and then bear the consequences, or you will listen to the doctor and go against your desire because that's where your benefit is. So it's exactly, and even more than that with Allah Azza wa Jal, because it is hidden, you don't know. A path is here, it looks great, but Allah is telling you that it is bad for you. So you have to resist the temptation of following that path. Or a path is here, you don't want to do it, but Allah is telling you it's a must or it is best for you. So you have to resist your disinclination or dislike for it and follow it. So Allah is the ultimate judge, yes.
Okay, all right. Question number 3. Everyone is different. Is it okay if I come to conclusion that fasting is not my strength and I do not fast 3 days monthly? Please give me some advice so that I can overcome this to fast 3 days monthly. I continue, Sheikh?
Yes, please. Yeah.
You mentioned perfecting our obligatory acts, especially Salah, paired with fasting 3 days every month could treat our hearts. But if we still fail, what should we do?
Yeah, so these are two questions asking basically the same thing, inshallah. So, first, if I come to the conclusion that fasting is not my strength and I do not fast the 3 days monthly, that's up to you, inshallah. I mean, remember that these are recommended acts. These are recommended acts. So, yeah, we want to emphasize them, but at the same time, we don't want to emphasize them to the degree that everybody starts feeling so guilty because they're not doing them. If you choose not to, right? And no one can come and condemn you and say, hey, you're not fasting 3 days every month, that means that you're bad. No one has the power, because if Allah wanted that to be a constant in your life, He would make it an obligation. We can judge you and condemn you if you don't fast Ramadan without an excuse. But we can't do that if for the 3 voluntary days. So we don't want to change a sunnah to become an obligation where now, so what do I do now and I cannot fast? If you want to fast it, that's what is important about it, that you want to fast it, not be guilted into fasting it. You want to fast it because there's benefit in it. You feel good when you want to fast. You want to try and fast. And if you fail and if it's hard, you want to find ways. But not that it is so bitter that I have to, but I don't want to. So just keep that in mind, inshallah, that if you come to the decision, for instance, that fasting is not for you, you can't. Why? Because of health reasons, you cannot. Because this answers partly the question that will come even after that. I can't fast those 3 days. Why? Because for health reasons, I cannot. They'll say, that's fine. You have an excuse. You don't have to dwell on the fact that you cannot do this. There are other things that you can do. Or there are other things in my life that I need to do that are more important, that will be affected if I fast. Even though it's just 3 days in a month. That is, I'm taking care of my kids, let's say. If I'm fasting, I have no energy at all to be able to teach them, to educate them, take care of them. I'll have no energy at all. So which one of the two should I do? Take care of my kids or fast? If it's an option, I mean, if it's one of the two, then of course taking care of your kids. Or I'm taking care of my parents. I will not have the energy, because not all bodies are the same. I will not have the energy or the patience to be able to take my care of my parents, serve them well, be patient if I'm fasting. So say, no, take care of your parents. Fasting can come later, but take care of your parents right now. So there's sometimes where there are different obligations or different recommended acts, and some are more important than fasting. We say those come first, take precedence, right? So keep that in mind, inshallah, that it's not always the same for everybody, and not all bodies are the same. Some bodies can tolerate fasting, some bodies cannot. Some people cannot fast on their own. They can do it in Ramadan when everybody's fasting. On their own, they can't. So one of the advice, inshallah, that I give, if you want to fast, you say, I want to, my health allows it, but it's just difficult for me. What can I do? He says, first of all, ask Allah for it, to give you the strength to be able to do it. And keep asking Allah to open that door of ibadah for you. Okay? Make sure that it's not conflicting with more important obligations that you're supposed to do. But if not, ask Allah, first of all, to open that door for you. And maybe with time, inshallah, you will find the desire and you will find the strength. Know also that everything in the beginning will be hard. Ramadan in the beginning, inshallah, Ramadan is going to be in April. Ramadan in the beginning, if we're not used to fasting, is hard. Then you get used to it. Then it becomes easier. Okay? Maybe not easy for some people, but easier for sure. So it's the same thing. If you start those 3 days, the first day, the second day, the third day, the first month, those are difficult. But later on, it becomes easy. What also going to make it, inshallah, easier is to do it with a group. So, if you have members of family or people in your neighborhood or people in the masjid or online, just like this group, right? And you, inshallah, say, okay, everybody, we're going to try to fast 13, 14, and 15. Who's with us? Not for riyah, showing off. No, just simply so if I say I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you, motivate everybody, inshallah. So you feel that I'm not fasting alone, I'm fasting with other sisters. So companionship makes it easier. So it's the same, inshallah, with other acts of ibadah. Maybe reading the Quran by yourself on your own is difficult. If you coordinate that with other sisters, it becomes easier. If you do it in the masjid with other sisters, it becomes easier, or at home. So that's the advice, inshallah, that I can give in terms of maybe how we can develop that habit, right? Let me see. If you fail, right, which really answers the question that comes after. So fasting and salah, they treat your heart. What if you fail to fast? Okay, what if you fail to fast? What does that mean for your heart? The obligation in Ramadan is a necessity because it does something to your heart that every single person needs and you cannot do without. The fasting that is voluntary that comes after Ramadan in these months, right, and every other month, this is extra medication. If we cannot get to that extra medication through fasting, maybe I can't, for health reasons, fast. If I cannot get to that extra medication through fasting, I can get to it, inshallah, through other acts of worship. So maybe I'm not a fasting person after Ramadan. Okay? But I read the Quran. That I can do. Maybe I can't fast, but I can read a lot of Quran. I can pray a lot. I can give a lot of sadaqah. I can make a lot of dhikr. I can make a lot of dua. So if I can't do this, I find other ibadah that is easier for me, that Allah had made available, and I invest more of my energy in it. So if I can't do this, I do that. So subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jal is going to give some of us, let's call them specializations or strengths. The best, inshallah, is if you're able to do everything, at least a minimum of everything. A minimum of voluntary salah, a minimum of voluntary fasting, a minimum of voluntary Quran, and so on. But some of us will find extra strength and ability in one area or two areas compared to other areas. So maybe with fasting, I'm not the strongest person to be able to fast. But when it comes to the Quran, alhamdulillah, I'm reading, one juz a day or two juz a day or more. So compensate. So if you can't do it in one area, compensate for that by doing it in other areas, inshallah. Allah.
Sure. If I want to understand with previous hadith as well, the halal and haram is clear. So is it right if I put it that haram, yes, we know that haram is completely harmful, right? So we need to live it completely. And halal is a necessity. And then you mentioned previously is about the more frequent that we need to do, meaning Allah is explaining to us that we need it more than the other ibadah that is not more frequent needed. And the sunnah, is it right if I'm to say that it basically provides for you to be, the wisdom behind it is for us to be more productive, or to provide more rahmah from Allah, that you may overcome whatever circumstances that you have in life, or to basically to make you stronger. I don't know how to call it, but because for example, I know that tahajjud is not, it's just sunnah, right? But it's something that if one be able to do it, it's a different kind of strength a person would be getting, spiritual strength and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are not, exhausting, making dua and strive to do that, are we missing many things that Allah have provided for us to so that we may achieve certain things?
Now, so think of the voluntary acts, right? So, and the obligations as okay. So you have a building, and the obligations give you the foundations, and the voluntary acts add levels to that building. So all the voluntary acts, they increase everything that the obligations introduce and establish. So if you're talking about iman, you're talking about taqwa, you're talking about closeness to Allah Azza wa Jal, you mentioned strength, insight, wisdom, tranquility, serenity, everything that the obligations introduce, the voluntary acts take it and start building it and elevating it up and up, depending on how much you do, right? And that's where people start competing. Even the obligations, by the way, because we don't all perform the obligations the same way, but when you add the voluntary acts to it, it enhances even the obligations, okay? Because it increases your iman. So even your performance of what Allah had obligated, even that is enhanced, and they enhance your own connection to Allah Azza wa Jal. So that's why it's there. But it's important to distinguish between the two, because sometimes I may be weak and I will not be able to perform some of these recommended acts, or maybe many of them. At least I should know the difference between the recommended and the obligations, so that I'll never compromise the obligations, but I could leave the recommended when I am weak, when I am busy with. So there's that area is very clear. And it's also important to understand it also in terms of I cannot invest all my energy into the recommended, neglecting the obligations. So the obligations are always the foundations, and I build on them whatever Allah Azza wa Jal had wanted me to do but did not obligate. So know the difference, inshallah, between them. But once you understand that, then fasting 3 days, reading the Quran are not an obligation, right? Praying at night, praying the sunnahs are not an obligation. But if you actually do it, you will see the benefit, inshallah, and you will see why Allah recommended them. You will feel it. Besides what you read, you will feel it. Allah.
Sure. I would like to understand this question in the light of educating our children. So basically, we start with the priority is like, the obligatory must be done, and then haram must be left, and then sunan is based on whatever that they are comfortable with, and grow as they go. So meaning, parents shouldn't maybe offer for them to do, but do not can be okay, we're gonna do tahajjud, everyone do tahajjud, and the one do not wake up, we kind of investigate further, or how should we do that?
Right. I mean, this is going to be kind of it's going to be dependent on your understanding of your children, how old your children are, and their tolerance. So, and their compliance. So early on, right, when the children are really compliant and malleable, meaning they can really change them, you can wake them up if you wish for tahajjud, to get them used to it, so that they could see it, have a sense of it. And then you'll see how that progresses. With some children, maybe inshallah, this will become a feature. Maybe they will just be happy with it, or at least not object so much. It becomes part of their life. You know how they get used to going to the masjid, get used to going to Jum'ah. They'll just get used to, like before Fajr, or at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, we wake up, we pray, and then we go back to sleep, or we continue till Fajr, then pray, and then go back. It becomes part of their routine. So you'd really have to see where you're at and what they are used to. For some kids, right, you can't push these things because they are demanding and they're not used to them. You did not get them used to them. I mean, maybe we just discovered them even late. So I know that they are important, but I cannot force them, especially if they're in an age now where they could rebel, right? So at least let me just emphasize the obligations and then offer. Okay, I'm also doing tahajjud. If you want, you can wake up with me. I can wake you up if you wish. It's beautiful, it's this and this, but let them want to, at least for something as difficult as tahajjud. Fasting, you can entice. I'm going to fast, your father's going to fast, your mother's going to fast. Would you like to join us, right? Offer it if it's a sunnah, right? And they're old. And they're young enough, meaning they could be molded, they could be changed. You can kind of be more inviting. Okay, you can tell them, okay, why don't you do it? Because they may want to do it simply because you're doing it. When you start noticing that they are finding their own way in life, and they may start telling you, I don't want to do this and I want to do the things that you're doing, offer, but don't push too much, because it's a sunnah. But the obligation, that's a red line. You need to pray on time. You need to fast Ramadan. That is a red line.
So basically, we need to make it part of our lifestyle as parents.
Yeah.
All these sunan things, so that when they're young, when they obedient and following us, imitate us, they would feel that it's part of their lifestyle and get used to it.
Yeah, that's the easiest. If not, if it's going to come later at a later age in their teenage years, right? Teenage years, it's difficult. Now they're different. I mean, physically they're different, emotionally they're different. So to try to put that on them, where we're even struggling at times, right, with the obligations, to put on them here fast, here extra fasting, here's extra salah, and this is, it's difficult to wake up for Fajr for them, and now we're asking them also to wake up for Tahajjud. You got to be wise about it, inshallah. So it depends on the child, depends on the family, when you started. So decide, inshallah, what is the best, and don't push them beyond their ability. Okay? And always remember yourself at that age, right? Always remember yourself at that age. Allah.
Okay, inshallah. So question number 4.
I think number 4 is kind of answered, right? So number 4 is, as I said, if you cannot fast the 3 days, there are other ways, inshallah, to remove the contamination from your heart. So as we said, maybe you're not fasting, but the Quran does that too. Quran, purifies the heart. Sadaqah purifies the heart. Dhikr purifies the heart. So fasting is not the only way. Fasting is one of the ways. I'm saving you time, sister, from reading the question. So fasting is one of the ways where you can purify your heart. If that door is closed for whatever reason, you cannot do this, there are other ways that Allah Azza wa Jalla had given, which is the Quran, which is salah, which is dua, which is dhikr, sadaqah. All of these things help, inshallah. So if you can't do it with fasting, alhamdulillah, Allah has given us other ways to purify our hearts using other methods and other ibadahs. So that's question number 4. So I thought just answering it this way, inshallah, saves us from reading the whole question, inshallah.
Okay, sure. There's follow-up question on Zoom pertaining. Okay, how do we teach the children to understand the difference between fardu ain, fardu kifaya, obligation, sunnah, wajib, sunnat, permissible, makruh, and haram?
Well, you're making it too difficult. Why is it? We don't need to give them a class, and these things are easy to understand. I don't need each child, right, to become a scholar in fiqh or usul al-fiqh. By the way, define fardul ayn, define fardul kifaya, define the sunnah, define. These things are easy enough, right? Fard and wajib are the same thing. Don't distinguish between them. Fard and wajib are obligations, right? So there's no distinction between them. So you don't need to introduce 2 terms. Fard, wajib, fard is fine. Some of the ahnaf, they have a difference, but it's not relevant. So fard is an obligation. Okay, Allah wants it. Sunnah is recommended. And if you don't do it, Allah does not punish you. If you do it, Allah rewards you. The obligation, you have to do it. If you do it, Allah rewards you. If not, Allah punishes you, unless there's an excuse. That's the difference between them. And that's easy enough, right? Fardul ayn, fardul kifaya, okay. Fardul ayn meaning that It's an obligation on each one of us, like fasting, Ramadan. Fardul kifaya, it's on the collective. Like all of us are supposed to stop crime, like the society, stop corruption. So all of us need to work for that. If we don't do that, okay, then all of us sin. All of us sin. So it's not an obligation, meaning that let's try to give an example of fardul kifaya. Something. Let's say, for instance, X. This is haram. It shouldn't be allowed in society, right? It means that all of us collectively, not each one of us, right? Collectively, right? We're supposed to stop importing this haram thing into our country. Now, as an individual, right? I don't import and export. I'm not a business person. I'm not the government. But I and my neighbor and so on and so on, all of us need to do that. If all of us fail and that haram comes into our country and we haven't done anything to stop it, then I have sinned. If I've done and then we failed, then Allah excuses us. But anyway, what is important for your child is not to learn about fardul kifaya. It's basically to learn about what is an obligation on them and what is an obligation on what is sunnah or voluntary or recommended. If they learn that, that's enough. That's enough. So yani, don't complicate matters, inshallah. Islam is easy, it's simple. Obligations are known and sunnahs are known. Hold on to the obligations at all costs, all the time. Okay? And the sunnahs, do them whenever you can so that Allah Azza wa Jal can protect the obligations. It's as simple as that, inshallah. Allah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So question number 5. There are so many contaminations clinging to our parts. Which one we have to treat first, so the rest can be treated easily after that?
Naam, inshallah. So that part, so that the rest can be treated easily, that doesn't exist. So that how the rest can be treated easily, something like that doesn't exist. I mean, you would still have to do the work and strive and work to remove contaminations. There are priorities, but each one of those contaminations requires work. There's nothing like, if I just do that, then the rest is easy. No, the rest are not easy. Even if you say, okay, I'm finished with this, but you're never really finished with one, right? It's like an illness, let's say, physical illness. How can I protect myself from the flu so I'm never sick again? It said that's never going to happen. You're always going to be attacked. You can increase your immunity, but you're always going to be attacked. How is it that I can never be sick again? You can never do that. You always have to fight off sickness, right? So what we can do, inshallah, is prioritize. So what are the most dangerous of contaminations in the heart? Shirk is that. Shirk in Allah Azza wa Jal. Because all the other diseases and all the other ways to treat them depend on you having a strong connection to Allah. So if there is shirk in the heart, then obviously, right, there is a big flaw in it that stops you from correcting the rest of your life, of fixing the rest of your life, including your heart. So it's a shirk. So learn about shirk, what shirk is, what the right aqidah is, what Allah Azza wa Jal deems to be unforgivable shirk, what is a major shirk, what is a minor shirk. Learn about these things because they ultimately are about what? The heart's attachment to someone other than Allah. That's what shirk is about. Association. Meaning when you call on somebody else other than Allah Azza wa Jal, why do you do so? Because there is love for them, equal to or sometimes more than loving Allah. Why do I fear so and so more than Allah Azza wa Jal? Why do I obey so and so more than Allah? You have visiting all these things, right, is important. So I say shirk, inshallah, and then we talked in the book, inshallah, you need to do the work, right? I'm not going to summarize it. You need to do the work. Meaning, if you've read the book, inshallah, so far, you probably have come across the major diseases of the heart, right? So you need to go back to it and say, okay, so there's the disease of envy, there's the disease of kibr, there's the disease of hatred, there's this disease, that disease. But the biggest thing that you want to begin with, inshallah, is shirk, right? So make sure that tawheed, you have tawheed, you have a strong connection in your heart to Allah Azza wa Jal, that makes the rest, or treating the rest, easier. Not easy, but easier, inshallah. So that's what I'll say. Wow.
Sure. So these continuations, right, we cannot compare with other people, because for certain people it might be different and their strength will be different, the way they've been raised is different. So it's pretty much we cannot compare ourselves with other people, right, Sheikh?
No, I mean, you're not going to compare entirely, although some, let's say, for instance, commonalities exist. Like when we're talking about envy, like everybody has that. The intensity of it is different. Envy, everybody has that. The propensity for pride, everybody has that, or some pride. Everybody has it. Anger, hatred, everybody has that. But then intensities are different. As you said, because of background, because of personality, because of current circumstances. So some people are more envious than others. Some people are more prideful than others. Some people have not learned about Tawheed. Some people haven't yet developed their love for Allah Azza wa Jal. Some people in their hearts still rely on somebody else or themselves more than Allah. So it has to do with a lot of other factors, but commonalities exist across the spectrum, meaning from one person A to person Z, all of us are fashioned more or less the same way with the same things in us. So when we're talking, that's why when we say envy, everybody understands it, right? So intensities are different, and our abilities to deal with that is different, and how much we've dealt with it is different. But the basic raw material is always there. Yeah. Allah.
Okay, alhamdulillah. So question number 6. Regarding the saying of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, does it mean we can fast on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays alone with the same intention to fast on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of each Islamic month?
Right. So when we say, inshallah, fast 3 days of each month, they could be any 3 days. Any 3 days. So if you're used to fasting Mondays of each week, then you've done it. If you're used to fasting Thursdays of each week, you've done it. If you're going to fast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you've done it. It could be the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, the end of the month, and the Prophet ﷺ did all of that, by the way. Sometimes he would fast the middle. Sometimes he'd fast from the beginning, not the middle. Sometimes he'd fast from the end, not the middle or the beginning. So it depends on how busy he was, what he was doing, but just also to show you that all of this is allowed. So yeah, what she mentioned, if you do Monday and then Thursday, Friday, you're fine, inshallah. Then you fasted 3 days. Yeah. Allah.
Okay, inshallah. So question number 7. How do we start transitioning from extreme purification of the soul to a moderate version practiced by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions? Is extreme purification a sign of mental illness instead? If yes, how do we self-diagnose and treat it to our best ability? Many people can afford to pay professionals to treat the illness.
Right, inshallah. So, the second part first. Is extreme purification a sign of mental illness? No, not necessarily. So I don't like to kind of be obsessed with mental illness where, as you said, self-diagnose, because this is very tricky. If you start believing that what I'm doing is because of the mental imbalance that I have, you may develop something just because you are so suspicious of it that you start believing it. No, extreme purification or misguided, let's call it misguided purification, could be simply a sign of you wanting to be really close to Allah, but you don't know how. So you're just on a wrong path of purification. That could be it. So the Sahaba who came, and they proposed, and that reached the Prophet ﷺ that I will, I think it was in the book, I'll fast, I'll always fast, and never break my fast, meaning every day I'll fast. I'll sleep the whole night, I'll pray the whole night, I'll never get married, I'll never eat meat. That's misguided or extreme purification, but it wasn't a result of an imbalance in their head. That's why they were doing it. It's just simply they wanted to be close to Allah, and they thought this is the way. So don't associate mental illness with extreme purification. Could there be a connection? There might be, but I don't see that you should make that connection that if this is here, then that is there. Okay, so don't make the connection, inshallah, and definitely don't self-diagnose. If now misguided purification can lead to physical harm and mental harm. Okay, so that's why it's important to know the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in how you wanna purify and elevate your soul. Otherwise, you can harm yourself physically, and you can harm yourself mentally and emotionally. So how you, inshallah, so don't worry about going to a professional unless you do have a problem. Don't worry about going to a therapist unless you have a problem. Don't do self-diagnosis, it's not helpful. Just pull back. If you're doing this extreme purification, just pull back. So how do I pull back? You say, follow what the Prophet ﷺ, just look at his sunnah and do what he used to do. Look at what the Sahaba used to do and do exactly as they used to do, then you'll be balanced, inshallah. So the maximum that you can fast, okay, is every other day. Let's take fasting, because we're talking about fasting as a method also of purification. The maximum that you can do is every other day, meaning today I fast, not tomorrow. The day after tomorrow I fast, but not the day after. That's the maximum. You can't do more than that. So you know the limit, right? Reading the Quran, of course, if it does not conflict with other obligations, the maximum that you can do is reading 10 juz a day. The maximum. You can't do more than that, and you shouldn't. And if it's conflicting with other obligations, then you should read less. But by the way, most people don't suffer from extreme purification. What we're suffering from is too little of it. But if a person is at that stage, then you know that the Sunnah puts the fence around these extreme practices, so that you know I've crossed. So inshallah, it's not difficult. Whatever it is that you're doing, inshallah, whether it's, let's say, dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal, and sometimes, by the way, you may need to consult someone. If you can't see it and you don't know if what you're doing is extreme or not, religiously, you just need to ask someone, what I've been doing so far is doing this. And someone will tell you, no, you've gone too far. Or no, you're still fine, but is it affecting the rest of your life? Is it affecting the rest of your life? So it needs to be balanced between other obligations that you have. So what I would recommend, inshallah, don't think about mental illness for now. Understand the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. What is his habit? What did he used to do? What is the maximum that he had allowed? And fall within and closer to his practice, closer to the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, right? And if you doubt whether you're overdoing something, ask somebody who's religious. I'm knowledgeable. I'm doing this. Consult me. Advise me, please, on if I'm doing more than what I have to, and if it's affecting my life. And that's what I recommend, inshallah. Allah.
Sure. Because whatever Rasulullah introduced is a part of fitrah, right? So if we struggle in doing certain things that Rasulullah recommended, meaning we have to check our heart, and it shouldn't be like struggling, like the first question asking about the overwhelm performing salah. So we shouldn't feel that way. By right, we should be like harmony with whatever Rasulullah asked us to do. And then if we did feel like find joy in the halal and doing whatever that is commanded by Rasulullah, meaning that something needs to be fixed somewhere. Is that correct understanding?
No, there are some obligations that you will struggle with for a long time, and that's fine, inshallah. That's fine, as long as you're struggling with it. Yeah, it does mean that we still need to mature, but you don't need to feel guilty every time you are struggling with it and say, beat yourself and say, if you were better, you wouldn't feel this. If you were better, you wouldn't feel this. You don't have to do this, because there are some things that, the Prophet ﷺ did it, but it'll be difficult for all of us in the beginning. And some acts will be difficult for many of us, even not in the beginning, even after many years. They will continue to be difficult. The issue here, as long as you are struggling, and then, the theme here was there are differences, individual differences between us. Okay, so sometimes the Prophet ﷺ used to do this. For some of us, it's easy. For others, it isn't. But there are other things the Prophet ﷺ used to do that would be easy for us. Why is that? Because our personalities are different. Our strengths are different. So even though I'm doing it, and salah is difficult for me, let's say, or fasting is difficult for me, as long as you want to do it, and you keep struggling, and you keep striving, and you keep pushing, then you're on the path. That's fine. That's what we want from you. That's what Allah wants from you. And He recognizes your struggle, and He appreciates it, and He rewards you for it. Okay? And maybe sometimes the one who is struggling, okay? I'm saying maybe sometimes the one who is struggling will be more rewarded than the one who is not. Okay? Because it's difficult for you, and you're still persisting. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said about reading the Quran, he says, the one الذي يقرأ القرآن وهو عليه شاق له أجران. He says, the one who reads the Quran and it's difficult for him, he has 2 rewards for it. Okay? He has 2 rewards for it. So sometimes if you're struggling, it's not a sign that something is bad with me. Some you're struggling because, you are fighting with yourself. Right? But you need that. And as long as you are firm and you continue to fight with yourself, 2 things are happening. Allah sees it and He rewards you. And there is a point, if you live long enough, a point in the future where it will become easier, where you will win over yourself. So think about it this way, inshallah, so that you don't feel guilty every time, I'm giving sadaqah, let's say, and it's difficult. I'm so terrible. I should feel better. Because if you keep blaming yourself, what I'm afraid is that if you keep blaming yourself like that all the time, you'll hate sadaqah simply because you don't feel nice when you're giving sadaqah. And you don't realize that, no, it is indeed a struggle every time you give it, until a time when you win against yourself and it's easy. But that will take time. That will take time. And by the way, recognize that every single person has this thing in his life, in her life, that they are struggling with. It may not be the same thing for everybody. But I'm struggling with fasting. Another person fasts all the time. But for me, I'm struggling with fasting. But I will be okay doing something that they are struggling with. It's going to be like that. So struggle in the areas where you need work until your heart submits to you, until it's cleansed and purified and elevated. But in the areas where Allah had blessed you, invest. Because Allah made it easier for you, invest in those areas. Allah.
Inshallah, Sheikh. Question number 8, the last question for Hadith 35. Can you share some details why the companion Kahmas stay away for the whole year and didn't stay close to the Prophet ﷺ and his companions to learn Islam after his conversion?
So, of course, not everybody who accepted Islam at the time of the Prophet ﷺ could migrate to Medina. And even the people of Medina, they couldn't always be around the Prophet ﷺ to learn from him. So there are practical reasons why a person like him and many others, right? They couldn't just simply, after accepting Islam, just move to Medina. So they had families elsewhere, they had children, responsibilities. In some of those cases, the Prophet ﷺ, right, would want them to be there to give da'wah to their tribe and to their areas. So practically, even if today, if you think about it, right, let's suppose that there's a sheikh in the masjid and he's teaching, and I tell you, how is it you're not 24 hours a day sitting with that sheikh and learning? They say, but I have kids, and I have a spouse, and I have parents, and I have work, and I live in another city, and I cannot move. And these are the reasons, right? So these Sahaba, right, accepted Islam, but they had family, and they had responsibilities in other areas. And even the people in Medina, right, they couldn't be with the Prophet ﷺ every day. So we know in this hadith where Umar said, I had an agreement with a companion from the Ansar, where when I'm working, he'd be with the Prophet, and when I'm working, he would be with the Prophet, and when I'm with the Prophet, he'd be working, because they had to support their families. That's why they couldn't be there all the time, right? So, wallah.
Okay. So now questions for Hadith 36, visit the cemetery. Question number 1. I was informed that it is better for women not to go to cemetery. So could Shaykh suggest method to substitute to soften heart for women so that we may please Allah and Rasulullah?
Now, so I mean, if you take the opinion that women cannot visit the cemetery, alhamdulillah, there are other areas where you can do that. So visiting the sick, being around the sick and visiting the sick achieves a lot of what this achieves, visiting the cemetery. So visiting the graves remind you of the hereafter, and also visiting the sick remind you of the fragility of life itself, that all of us can be sick and we can get closer and closer to death. So it does that. So you can visit the sick in your neighborhood, you can, whenever and if it is appropriate, visit the sick in the hospital, right? That's a possibility too. You can volunteer, you can visit the sick, especially those who don't have relatives around. You can visit them, take care of them, bring them things that they like, read them the Quran, read them some stories, just comfort them. You can do that. So you'll be doing two things, inshallah, benefiting yourself and benefiting them. So visiting the sick, inshallah, can accomplish that. And then of course, dua and Quran. Alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jalla had given us many ways to be able to reach Him subhanahu wa ta'ala and soften our hearts. So as I said, if one is not available, others inshallah will be. There's a question from just Facebook. Let me answer it very quickly. Going for salat, janaza, one can take kifaya for a group of people. Is that right, Sheikh? What I understand from that is a small group of people can be enough for an entire group, or you're talking about just one person? Yeah, one person can pray. If you're talking about just janaza prayer, one person can pray, right? Or two, okay, preferably, right? At least two people, so that it's a jama'ah. If you don't have two, well, I mean, I really doubt, except in extreme circumstances, if you don't have two, one person just pray janaza, then that's enough, inshallah. If I understood that, right? But I mean, janaza, praying janaza is an example, which is good that you brought it up, of fardul kifaya, meaning that this is an obligation, but on the group. So if a small group does it, okay, they fulfill the obligations. If nobody performs it, nobody washes the dead person, buries the dead person, prays janaza, then the whole group in the city has sinned because they have not performed or offered that obligation. But if a small group does it, then they fulfill it, inshallah. Right. Wallah.
Okay. Question number 2, Shaykh. When are the best times for women to visit the cemetery to remind them of the truth of life? Are we allowed to sit somewhere at the cemetery while reflecting on the reality of death?
Okay. So the best time for a woman to visit the cemetery, there is no time, a specific time that is recommended. So visit at this particular time or that particular time. But you have to keep in mind, inshallah, in your society, on your city, do they allow women to visit the graves or not? Is it something that this is recommended, ordinary, or is it discouraged and frowned on? So if this is something that is disliked in your society, in your city, even if you hold the opinion that you're allowed to do it, you shouldn't do it because you don't want to be criticized for it. Because people will not understand and they will blame you. So you don't want to do it if that's the case, right? But if they allow it, and if you hold the opinion that it is allowed, then any time, right? Before, of course, there are certain times you naturally wouldn't go, but any other time you would go, inshallah. There's no a particular time that is recommended for you to go and visit. Are we allowed to sit somewhere at the cemetery while we reflect on the reality of death? Again, you'd have to see the rules of the cemetery, the rules of that area, and what they look on and accept, and when they look on and look at and discourage. So if you pass by and you just stand and you say the dua when you enter the cemetery and you just reflect on what is happening and then you move out, that probably would be the best. Sitting, I don't know if there's a place in the cemetery for you to sit, Allahu Alam, but I don't know how that will look. So what I would recommend, inshallah, is for you to pass by. If this is allowed in your society, in your country, in your city, you would pass by, inshallah. They say that dua, or that dhikr when you enter, look around, just feel, think about it, inshallah, while standing, and then, to move out, inshallah. That's what I recommend.
When you mentioned about if you accept your opinion that it's not recommended for women to go to the cemetery, what do you actually mean, Sheikh? Can you further elaborate so that we might understand correctly? Because we don't want to misunderstood it the way we shouldn't. Can you elaborate it?
Yeah, it says because in the first question, the questioner says, I was informed that it is better for women not to go to the cemetery. So there are two opinions. So one opinion that says, no, women are not allowed to visit the cemetery at all. And there's an opinion that says they're allowed. So because the questioner said, I was informed that it is better not to go, so here's the assumption is that maybe she was told that, or she lives in a society where it is not recommended, they don't like, or they adopt the opinion that women should not visit the cemetery. So you could be in a society where they tell you, no, it's not allowed for you to visit the cemetery. But as a person, maybe individually, you think that, no, legally, I am allowed. But you have to respect what the society sees, what the society has decided, what the local sheikh or the mufti has said. Because there are two valid opinions here. Each has its evidence. So you don't want to go against, even if your personal opinion is A, you don't want to go against what the mufti or what the local sheikhs have said, and with the fact that the other opinion is equally valid, equally strong. So that's what I meant by it. So being sensitive to what your society has chosen, so that you don't do something in defiance and end up, being criticized and blamed for it. That's what I meant.
Okay. So question number 3. How often the Prophet and his companions visited the cemetery to soften their hearts?
Oh, that we don't know. That Allahu Alam, I do not know it. So it depends, right? It's a remedy. So the person, subhanAllah, can use it as they see fit and as they need it. But to give you frequency, I do not know of a frequency. I don't think it's recorded, right? Allah.
Yeah. Okay. Question number 4, Shem. Are we allowed to just participate in anyone's burial process, especially those we don't know, and we're not part of the janazah management team, for the sake of wanting to see a strong reminder of death?
Right. So it's clear. So this question is asking that can we participate in someone's janazah even though we don't know them? It's actually recommended, especially for men. As I told you about women, there's a difference of opinion. Oh, you're not allowed to visit the cemetery. So if we adopt that opinion, then I'm not going. I'm not going. Even if it's a relative, I wouldn't go. Right? If I adopt the other opinion, which is that it's recommended for women as it is for men to visit the grave, then I say, yeah, then women can go, but they need to what? Not mix with men when they visit the cemetery or when they're witnessing someone's burial. So both men and women, they would go, and both of them would observe the etiquettes of visiting the cemetery, including not crying, not wailing, and what have you, and they're not mixing. That's important to keep in mind. So, if I'm doing that with all of these guidelines, are we allowed to participate in someone's burial even though we do not know it? Absolutely, it's recommended, right? Recommended. So when somebody is dead, it's recommended that you pray janazah. You don't know them. It's recommended that you pray janazah. And it's recommended that you go with them to the grave and witness the burial until they are buried. There is a lot of rewards in that. So again, there is benefit that you receive in terms of the health of your heart, but also in terms of rewards that Allah Azza wa Jalla gives. So whether you know them or not does not affect that. So you can go even though you don't know them. Allah. Yeah.
Okay. Question number 5, Sheikh. It is understood to go to the market for our needs, but is it okay to go to some places in the market for pleasure, such as eating at our favorite restaurant, and send our kids to indoor playground?
Right, inshallah. So, I mean, it's fine, inshallah. I mean, going to the market is halal, right? It's halal. It's not haram. And we don't want to treat it in a way that makes it prohibited, because that could, can be extreme. Now, so think about it this way, inshallah. So, what is wrong about the market? What is wrong about the market? That's the thing that you want to avoid. That's the thing that you want to avoid, right? And included in that, inshallah, is excessive attachment to the market or to the malls. Like whenever you go there. And you're always there. And you spend excessive amount of time there. That is a problem. But if you're telling me something like that, for instance, going for necessities to buy things that you need, absolutely. Or going maybe as the question here, going to eating in a favorite eating spot, and then children are playing in the indoor playground. There's nothing wrong with that, inshallah. So it's not prohibited. You just want to avoid two things. Anything that is haram in the mall, right? And then also to be there all the time. To be there all the time. Because that's a place of where materialism lives, consumerism lives. The attraction of the dunya is very strong there. So if you're always there, then that's the thing that is affecting your heart the most. But if, inshallah, you get there from time to time, either to buy or sometimes to eat or sometimes for your kids to play, I don't see a problem, inshallah, with it, as long as you avoid the haram that is in the market, inshallah. Wallah.
So maybe if let's say there's music, so music is haram. So we understand that place have music. So we must avoid that particular mall.
I mean, it would be best, inshallah, because the longer you stay in that place, even though you don't intend to listen, so you're not going to listen there. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to buy a piece of clothing, and they're playing music. Okay, I'm not going for the music. So my entry into the mall to buy that thing is not haram. Because what? Even though this thing is playing, I'm not there to listen to it. Okay, so I go, I buy, do whatever I want, and I leave. Okay, versus somebody who goes there and you spend hours just hanging out, talking to your friends, eating this, and go on. That music keeps playing all the time. So even though you're not there to listen to it, after enough time, you are listening to it and waiting for it and enjoying it, and it's affecting you. So the longer you stay, the longer it changes you, right? So the malls are designed, in a way, subhanAllah, to keep you inside. It attracts you and to keep you inside, and it wants you to stay there, because the longer you stay, the more that you spend. So it's designed for that. So you want, inshallah, achieve a balance where if you need something, you go and you get it and you leave, right? Or if you are there, for instance, for your kids to play with other kids, there's something useful inside, inshallah, and you're gonna go and eat and whatever. When you finish, you leave in moderation, inshallah. Then yeah, that's fine. Go do your thing and then leave it. But don't live there. Don't stay there when you don't really need to be there, and especially if it's 1 hour after the other, one day after the other, it eventually, yani, changes you. So moderation, inshallah, moderation.
So Sheikh, if we're working at a place at market, for example, and then there's like music all the time, so there would be potential that our heart will be it's not good for our heart, meaning. So we have to evaluate looking at the marketplace whether it's suitable for us to work.
Yes. So I mean, I would say yes, right? So if you're working in the mall and then they're blasting music all the time, it is eventually, right. It is gonna affect you. So I would say, for instance, short and long term, you start thinking about, well, this is not the place where I should be. I'm not telling you that your job right now is haram, right? Maybe you already, let's say you already are working there. You're already in the food court. You're already doing something there, right? Your job is halal. You're selling phones. Yeah, you're selling food. Your job is halal. Okay, 100% halal. But the place where you're in, right? Unless you don't really hear any music, right? Or whatever, who's passing in front of you or whatever, right? But the context, the environment that you're in is not the best, not the healthiest. So you start thinking, inshallah, about finding something else that would be better for you, right? So yeah, I would say, inshallah, start looking elsewhere, inshallah.
Okay, sure. Question number 7. Okay, sorry. Question number 6. Besides malls, what other places fall into the category of market mentioned in this chapter?
I don't know exactly. I mean, beside malls, I mean anything that resembles it, but I don't have an answer for that. And so, I mean, okay, the worst places are, let's say, malls, or the worst places are the marketplaces because of what goes on in them. Not that everything that is in them is haram, but because of what goes on in them. So what other places could fall into that category? Any place that introduces sin, encourages those types of sins, would share into that critique. But I don't know of specific places, right? Allah. Yeah.
Question number 7, Shane. Are we sinning to go to the market for selling and buying without learning the rulings of transactions in Islam?
Nah. So especially if you are selling, you may be sinning if you don't know the rules. Okay? Buying is easier. So I'm not going to say that before you go and buy something, you need to go and take a course. That's not realistic, and no one has obligated that. Because buying is very simple, right? Here's the money, here's the merchandise. That's very simple. But when you start to sell, you become more responsible because you assume now that I'm buying something to sell it, and what I'm selling and how I'm buying it and how I'm selling it all needs to be in agreement with the Sharia. So you need to learn. So it's not an obligation on you if you don't sell, but it becomes an obligation on you when you start selling. So yes, you could be sinning if you don't learn the basics. And the basics could be something like what? Again, you don't have to purchase a book of fiqh and start reading. It'd be great if all of us did. But you can go to the Sheikh, the Mufti, the Imam, and ask, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Okay, am I doing it right or not? Is there anything wrong that I should avoid? So you ask these questions and you get the answer, and then you shall sell and buy accordingly. And if something new comes up, you ask. So that's the minimum, inshallah. So that you say, I'm going to buy this. Is this halal? I'm going to buy it this way. Is this halal? I'm going to sell it this way. Is that halal? So you need to know that everything that you're doing is halal. So it is an obligation for you to know. Buying, as I said, you don't need to do a lot because it's just simply direct exchanges of here's the money and here's the merchandise. Allah.
Okay. So question number 8. I heard about hadith on camel and cattle, which affect the owner. Could we use same hadith to interpret that owner of mall would have some effect, or does it go as Shaykh explain that it depends?
So, what I think that the questioner is referring to is that the one who herds camels, takes care of camels, and the one who does that with sheep, that profession affects your personality. It does affect your personality, meaning that in general, your profession affects your personality. That's absolutely true. So, herding camels makes you rough and tough, or herding sheep makes you more caring. Softer heart. So that has to do, of course, the nature of your profession affects you. So any profession, in fact, anything that you study affects your personality. So if somebody, connecting to what we said, somebody who works in the mall, surrounded with, again, not everybody who works in the mall experiences everything that I'm talking about. There's somebody who works in the mall in the kitchen. He sees nothing, he hears nothing. It's not the same thing. But there's somebody at the front who hears and sees everything. That's different. So professions are not the same. But if you are working in an environment where there's music all the time, or people who are in makeup, the best of clothes all the time, it is going to affect you. The owner of the mall, in a sense, if they are inside, then that exposure will affect them. Okay? That interaction in that place will affect them. Okay? So that's how it can affect them. If they are distant from it, it won't affect them. But if what is happening there is haram, then their income is haram, or part of their income is haram. Not their entire. I don't imagine that somebody who operates a mall, their entire income is haram. I don't imagine that, because a lot of halal goes on there, but there might be some problems there. So if there's some problems there, the part of that income may be problematic, but not all of it. So it affects you if you're in it, but if you're earning money from it, then that money could be mixed income. Some of it is halal, some of it is not so clean. Wallah.
So this is last question, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Question number 9. Can the specific praying area, musalla, inside our house be considered as the most beloved place inside of Allah, just like the status of mosque mentioned in the hadith in this chapter?
So that's an interesting question. Allahu a'lam if that's the case. So the best places that Allah loves are the masajid, right? So the question here is that if I have a specific area that is a musalla or masjidul bayt, so it's a masjid, but a masjid in the bayt. So it's called masjidul bayt, or you can call it musalla. Both are appropriate, inshallah. Would that be also more, a most beloved place in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal, just like the masjid? We say, Wallahu a'lam, it could be, or at least inside your house, that could be the most beloved spot. Because that's where Allah Azza wa Jal is being worshipped constantly. Okay, or that's the dedicated spot for the worship of Allah. So it's a possibility. So if we take that masjid to mean every place dedicated for the worship of Allah, then it can mean that corner or that room inside your house, that is the musalla, is beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal, or the most beloved spots to Allah Azza wa Jal, because salat takes place there. Or we can say that the masjid refers to the masjid, and the masjid has a specific definition to it. It's not belonged by any person, by any specific person. There's jama'ah prayer in it, there is jum'ah prayer, so that's a masjid. But then if that's the case, we can say that then within your house, the area that is designated as a musalla would be the best area in your house, because salah occurs in it. So Allahu a'lam, if our small masjid inside our home has the same status or the same love as the bigger masjid outside, I don't know if it has the same status or not, but at least we can say, inshallah, if it doesn't, then inside our house, inshallah, it would be the most special area inside our house. just because the ibadah occurs in it. Wallahu a'lam.
Alhamdulillah, with that we have answered all questions from the sisters. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan, Shah. Since we are approaching to, I think we have another 2 meetings for, yeah,
so we have 37, we have 37 and 38 and 39 and 40, right?
Yeah.
And then we have one Hadith 41. Okay.
Yeah.
Inshallah.
One Hadith 41, and probably she has advice to us to how do we repeat everything else, and inshallah. So since we are nearing to the end of completing the book, if Shez can give us some advice on how do we keep up coping with the rest of the Hadith, and on. If she can give wise advice for us all.
Inshallah. So the advice, the final advice, inshallah, will come inshallah at the conclusion of the book, inshallah, when we finish it, when we reach Hadith 41, inshallah. But for everybody, inshallah, whether you've read everything or not, you could be someone who have just joined us or just joined us a few hadiths ago, inshallah. It's important, inshallah, to keep on it and to keep reading it and asking questions until the conclusion of the book, especially if you started it from Hadith 1. But even if you did not start it from Hadith 1, because as you notice, inshallah, each Hadith that you read gives you insight into how to understand yourself and how to deal with it and how to evolve, how to be better. So each one is teaching you something, inshallah, different. And at least you learn it. Even if you find yourself unable to apply everything, what's important, inshallah, is for you to learn it. Because when you learn it, maybe you'll be able to go back to it later on. When you are ready for it, you'll remember, I read something about that before. A lot of times, subhanallah, we've heard reminders about fasting, reminders about reading the Quran. And we heard them once and twice and 3 times. And then after repetition, I don't know, on the 4th time, 5th time, then we wake up and we start doing it. But what has helped us, and I think, Allah, and what has helped us is that we've heard it 4 times before or 5 times before. So that we did learn about it before. We did understand its importance before. And all of these repeated times were reminders. And reminders are important. So let's learn it, okay? Even if we cannot apply everything, even if I'm not ready to apply anything, but let's learn it. Because if you know it, inshallah, at least it may create in us the desire that I want to be better, and I know something now that I did not know before, and that will motivate me to learn even more, and maybe I want to adopt this. Maybe I'm too weak now, but I have it in my head that I want to be that person. I want to be that person who prays. I want to be that person who makes dua. I want to be that person who feels better, because I want to feel better about myself, about where I'm going, about my life, about my children, about tomorrow. I want to feel better. So you have a plan, but this plan will only work, inshallah, if you know what to do. So this is what we're trying to do, inshallah. So keep learning it until we finish it, inshallah. Think about it, ask questions. And if you don't have even any question, just sit and listen. Just sit and listen. And maybe one of these things that we say, inshallah, one of these questions that the sisters ask will inspire you. So keep learning it, inshallah. And when we come to the last hadith, bi'idhnillah azza wa jalla, we'll give you advice on kind of like what to do next and how to move, inshallah, move forward after you finished reading this, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam.
So, by reading it, we already having mental preparation that and making dua. The harder it is for us, then we are reminded by a reminder that we should make dua and submit more to Allah.
Yeah.
And then strive till the day that we can do whatever we wanted to do to please Allah.
Exactly. Because it's the most important thing, is just to know that there is another way, that there is a better way. that you can change, that you can be better. Once that is created, that understanding, then that desire is going to be there, inshallah, will follow. And that's where dua is going to come. Maybe you can't do it on your own, but then you ask Allah, Ya Allah, okay, I'm doing these wrong things. Now I know that they are wrong. Help me to avoid them. And there are these good things that I want to do. Now I know that they're beneficial. I should do them, but I'm not doing it. I don't have the strength to do it. Help me to do it. Now you started, inshallah, moving forward from not knowing, now I know, now I know and I want to do, now I know and I want to do, and I'm asking Allah to help. So see how it progresses. But it does not progress unless you know. So when we read it, inshallah, at least it creates in us the knowledge, the foundation for us, inshallah, to keep moving, inshallah, forward. So keep reading it, inshallah, thinking about it, asking questions, sharing it with others, inshallah. You will see, bi'idhnillah azza wa jalla. I ask Allah that you see it, you will see, inshallah, the fruit of all of that, inshallah.
Okay, one last question. If, let's say, Alhamdulillah, Allah give us the opportunity to address whatever our weaknesses, and we are able to do whatever Shem suggested in the book. So how do we prevent our heart from becoming Riya? Achieving is one thing, and then yeah. How do we prevent our heart from being proud of it?
Right. I mean, let's say here, like Riya and self-admiration are different things. So Riya is I'm doing it and I'm noticing what others will say about it, and I'm waiting for them to admire me and to say good things about me. So I'm doing it for them, right? And there is to be proud of it. Let's divide that into two things: being happy with what I'm done because I've done something good, or admiring myself for what I have done. So there are three things here, inshallah. The first is Riya. Okay, so Riya is, as I said, I'm doing it because somebody else is going to see it, and I want everybody to see it because this is how I feel good about myself when they praise me, when they say I'm knowledgeable, I'm pious, I'm this and that. This is a constant struggle that will never end. That's why, I said it's never going to be easy. When you say, oh, so it's easy for me to fix the other problems, I said it's never going to be easy because there's always something that's going to come up. Riya is one of those constant struggles that never goes away, because you'll always catch yourself saying, oh, am I doing it for them or for Allah? So that is in a lecture in itself. How do you kind of prevent yourself from, following, Riya or doing it for Riya? But just to simply realize that if I'm doing it for their sake, then I've ruined my deeds. If I'm doing it for their sake, they'll never be able to give me what I want. And what I want is from Allah Azza wa Jal, but these people are going to turn against me or abandon me sooner or later. So why am I wasting my life trying to please them? Like in general, we say that you can never please people. Not all the time, by the way. So it's futile to think that I can please so-and-so. And what do you get when you please them, by the way? Just few words of praise. And if for whatever reason you do something that they dislike later, they will come and criticize you and condemn you and insult you and forget about all the good things that you've done. So you wasted your life if the only thing that you want is for people to like you and for so-and-so to praise you. So you have to say that no one is worth it except Allah. Everybody else is just dust. As we are dust, they are dust. So I'm not going to seek the admiration of dust, right? Or sand. For what? Now, if you do something good and you feel happy, that's okay. You're allowed to do that, inshallah. If you're happy because, hey, I fasted, alhamdulillah. I prayed, I went to Umrah, I did something good. If you're happy because of that, it's good. Okay? If you admire yourself, it's bad. When you admire yourself, it means that I did it because I'm great. I did it because I'm worth it. I did it because I'm knowledgeable, I'm smart. So it becomes about you, not about Allah enabling me to do it. It's about me. And then you start doing it because you think, because of you. I need to do it because I'm strong. I need to do it because, and it's connected to riyah in a sense. I need to show people that I'm strong. I'm strong enough, so I'm going to do it. I'm strong enough, so I'm fasting. I'm strong enough, so I'll finish the Quran. It's not because I want from Allah. It's because I'm worthy of it, so I will do that, right? And not about Allah Azza wa Jal, or that Allah enabled you. So self-admiration or ujb is another, affliction that a person may have. So a person, tries to check their intention and say, why am I doing it? And ask Allah for sincerity and perform the voluntary, whatever is available of voluntary ibadah, perform it privately so that there's no one around. So that there's no possibility, inshallah, that I'm doing it so that others are praising. So fasting where very few people know about it or nobody knows about it. Night salah where nobody knows about it or very few people. And just like household. Sadaqah where nobody knows about it. So that here you're testing yourself. If you are a person who does it for riyah, for other people, you wouldn't give sadaqah in secret because you need somebody to see it. But if you give it in secret, it means that you don't care about people and this is for Allah. So you give it for Allah. So this is a way to train yourself, inshallah, to practice more sincere ibadah. But it's a struggle, inshallah, just like anything else. Allah.
Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. We couldn't thank enough, Sheikh, for deciphering whatever we have in mind and our struggle in implementing to purify our hearts. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh.
Barakallahu feekum, inshallah. Before I leave, this very quick question from Facebook. Is it halal to buy stocks? Yeah, it is halal to buy stocks if you're investing in a company that is halal. So if the company is halal, you can, inshallah, buy stocks in it, inshallah. Just like a brief answer, inshallah, to it. Now, barakallahu feekum for everybody who had the patience, the endurance, inshallah, to sit and listen and ask questions and listen to these answers. May Allah, I know that it's not easy to keep listening for an hour and a half or so, but may Allah Azza wa Jalla reward you for it and count it as a gathering for His sake, a gathering to learn, where Allah Azza wa Jalla loves the people who are involved and blesses them and mentions them by name. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla Rabbil Alameen to make us of those whom He had blessed with knowledge and with application of that knowledge. He had blessed with beneficial knowledge that they learn, absorb, and practice and teach. Ameen. Rabbil Alameen. Ask Allah Rabbil Alameen to forgive us our sins, to help us overcome our weaknesses, to cure our ignorance, cure us and clear us of contaminations of the heart and the diseases of the heart, those that we know about and those that we do not know about. I ask Allah to inspire us to be better than whom we are at this moment, to make us of those who call upon Him whenever we need anything, and that Allah Azza wa Jalla keeps increasing our ranks and elevating our ranks to the highest levels of Jannah. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khaira ajma'een. We ask Allah Rabbil Alameen to keep you all safe and sound and healthy and in the best of iman and in the best of mood, inshallah, in the best of conditions, inshallah. We will see you, inshallah. Those of you who will join us, we'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow with Islamic etiquette. If not, inshallah, I will see you in about 2 weeks, inshallah, for another session. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khaira. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.